And I see you got your coffee with you there, so that's just great. All right. So first of all, Christopher Brixen, thanks a lot for accepting to be with me on this call, and thanks for sticking your neck out and having a conversation about sometimes a taboo area. I know in some countries and in some industries it is really talking about climate change and what are you doing as a company. So I really, firstly, just want to acknowledge you for doing that and for just being courageous and accepting this invitation. I'm just really curious. I want to know, like, first of all, like, who are you? I know you, of course. We're colleagues from the past, but I think there's a lot of listeners here who really want to love to get to know you. So who are you? Let's hear.
No, thank you, Martin, and thank you very much for that introduction. I think this conversation is something that's missing, and it is really difficult. So I'm very happy to join you and share like our little microcosmos of how we're thinking at Precis, where I work currently. But yeah, a bit about me before that. So I studied at Copenhagen Business School for my bachelor and my master's. I studied a bit in Beijing as well, which made me wanted to try working outside of Denmark in my first job, if possible. Which led me to where the two of us met. So working at Google in Dublin, which was an overall good experience, I would say, but especially with that network that we got from there. So three really talented and smart and friendly guys that I knew there founded Precis Digital, where I'm currently working. So Precis is a digital marketing agency, which is already there. Like these days, like a controversial industry, which is something I think we might get back to. But yeah, we're close to 10 years in. We're 450 people across 8 offices. I founded our second office, like the Copenhagen office, after Stockholm, which was the original one, our mothership. And have very recently, so this month, officially transitioned into a new role, which is a chief people officer for the Precis Group, which is something that I'm really excited about. And then I have taken part in dabbling with what we should do around sustainability, thinking about the supply chain within that. But yeah, I guess that's something that we'll talk more on today.
Yeah, wow, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And really exciting with the new role, Chief People Officer for the Precis Group. And well, I'm hearing you're somebody who is. It sounds like you're somebody who is sticking your neck out, kind of like you're like entrepreneurial type of person who throws yourself out in new challenges, and now you're establishing a new function. It sounds in the group as well as before when you were establishing a new office in Copenhagen. What had you then take this kind of step? Because I know before you were the CEO of Precis Digital in Denmark. What had you take this step and now step into more of this people function?
So for the past at least 3 to 4 years, like my focus outside of like the day-to-day job as a CEO, which is a lot of random stuff, a lot of ad hoc stuff that occurs every now and then, and some financial reporting and all of those things, like has really been focused on trying to create and build a meaningful workplace. So that's sort of what gets me out of the bed in the morning. It's trying to make Precis a place where people's time is spent well. So hopefully a place that has a positive impact in our employees, like long-term careers. And then I have somewhat high ambitious for what kind of company I think Precis should be. I think we should be a good like world citizen. I think we should be a responsible company and employer. So that's what I've been spending a lot of time on. And then sort of this opportunity came along, and I thought that was really exciting. I did have to think a bit about it because like now for 9 years I've been doing this other stuff, and there's like identity questions and all of that. But I'm very excited to be able to focus full time on making Precis an increasingly meaningful workplace.
Yeah, yeah, just great. I mean, really exciting. And yeah, I'm hearing that's something that's important to you. Like, so as the chief people officer, how do you see? What is your perspective? And I'm curious, actually, just to hear from your personal perspective, not kind of chief people officer, but just from Christopher's perspective, what had you interested in the planet or in climate change and taking action on this?
So first of all, I think the science is real. So I do believe that we have some work ahead of us, like collectively. So that I think that part is important, and then I think it's more of like the social, like the quote unquote social case where it's the right thing to do, and then being part of like running a company. There's like an interesting opportunity in actually being able to affect things. So there's only so much to do like as an individual privately, but when all of a sudden you're part of a company and you're increasingly more people, that sort of increases the potential impact that you can have as well. So I think this fact of being interested both in like sustainability overall, but I would say even more so like also like within this is gonna sound so fluffy and so fancy, but I like reading philosophy as well, and I really do want Precis being like a good world citizen, and I think we should have a net positive impact. And maybe that coincided with a bit of like a early midlife crisis. I'm 35, and I hope that I'm not halfway yet, but who knows? But sort of like reevaluating what it is that I'm spending my time on. Like, is my call really like the digital marketing, for instance, and then in what setting? And that sort of led us to think about like the impact we have, not only like directly, like footprint wise, also as an agency at Precis, but more like in a supply chain view. So what impact does the companies we empower have, and how can we be selective in that regard? So I think that's where the interest stems from, like trying to make sure that we're like a positive part of the people we employ's careers, and then try to be a responsible workplace that does ideally is net positive. But it's a complex question and situation.
Yeah, it is. It is definitely a complex area, and yeah, I'm hearing that it's I'm hearing that came out of your personal realization as you were having you were saying early midlife crisis, where you were questioning the path you were on, like blazing forward and creating. And I just want to say for all the listeners, like Precis Digital is an incredible digital marketing agency that have been like named. I think you could probably correct me, but I know you've been awarded many different awards for the type of work you're doing. And I know it kind of started out of nowhere and then it just exploded. So you've done a lot of things right. And so kind of like going through business, and then you realize, wait a minute, like, okay, I'm doing this digital marketing thing. Is that really what I want? So I'm hearing you were asking yourself questions, maybe philosophical questions about like, what am I doing here? And that led you into, okay, like, is that like you were looking at and thinking about what's the legacy you're leaving behind?
Sort of. I'm not a massive believer in like a legacy. We'll all disappear soon, and no one will remember like a little while or a little while further necessarily. But I do think that like with the time and energy spent, like it should be hopefully yeah in a good way. And like I've always been fully on board. That's also why I joined and moved back to Copenhagen earlier than I had expected. Precis, where we're trying to challenge the notions around transparency, both when it comes to how clients or businesses, like how their advertising money is actually being spent. It shouldn't necessarily be around increasing budgets. It should be how to use that effectively. And then yeah, so we want to challenge like the big incumbents, like the big media agencies. So I support that vision. But yeah, like some years back, I felt like I wanted something a bit more than that. Yeah, it's been a while since the stuff I was most excited about was new features in Google Analytics, where now it's more some of these other things that are like workplace related. So it's been a that sort of journey, I guess.
Yeah. Amazing. And what do you see then your role as you're looking at all the workplace related things, the people things. Like, what do you see your role as a chief people officer in the conversation that you're having internally and perhaps also externally as a company inside of climate action?
So I think like sort of the realization that we came to. So we started measuring like in a pretty simple way our carbon footprint. I believe it was in 2018. So we work with something called like scope 3 emissions. So looking at like flights, taxi, hotels, and like what kind of carbon footprint we have with that. And then just by measuring that and adding like simple guidelines around that, if it's less than a 6 hour or 7 hour train ride, then you should take the train and not fly. Like we make sure this isn't that this isn't that significant in Copenhagen where I am, but a bit more so in other offices. Make sure that we have bikes available for people so they don't have to take taxis. Try to load for public transportation. So like small things. Um, so just by measuring these things, it became apparent that we could decrease it significantly. Plus, COVID happened, so that really helped us decrease like traveling and all that kind of stuff significantly. We also tried to take people, yeah, close to where you are. Actually, the last time we went, like a bit further away, for like our annual conference. So the last time we went to Lisbon, where we went traveling. But now we're doing that only in the Nordics, where the majority of our offices are, so that most of the people can travel by train. So relatively simple things that did have a positive impact on reducing our carbon footprint. And then like adding all that stuff up and then looking into how to offset it. And we ended up choosing, I'm just making sure I'm saying it right here. Yeah, the United Nations carbon offset platform. We realized that it wasn't that ambitious for an agency like us or the company that we want to be. Basically, it wasn't that expensive. Like it wasn't a big investment for us to offset our carbon footprint. Then what we decided was to offset it like with some simple assumptions to then offset like the lifetime of Precis, so that we've been carbon neutral all time. And we still didn't think that was ambitious for us enough, since we're mostly people sitting behind computers and not even traveling like that much. Um, so that's when we started to look more into like our supply chain, and this like my interest in it stemmed from that sort of early midlife crisis with like who is it actually that we're empowering. So there are like numbers from Boston Consulting Group and Google studies that they do on a recurring basis, that if you're best in class when it comes to digital marketing, you can increase your revenue by 20% while reducing the associated cost by 30%. So basically that is to me like a very significant impact. And then like who do we actually choose to empower this way? So then we started looking at our supply chain and the kind of companies that we're working with and the kind of companies that we want to work with in the future. So we sort of have this decision tree now where that new clients approaching us, that they have to pass our requirements for sustainability in order for us to work them. So I think for us, like our biggest impact isn't are like Precis Digital per se, but more in the supply chain, which is complex to work with. There's a lot of hypocrisy inherent in that. Like now we're too good to work with somebody, and like who are we to sort of decide that? So it's tricky, but yeah, I sort of keep coming back to, even though something is difficult, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. Yeah, even though we're being hypocrites every now and then, I don't think that's an excuse for inaction.
Yeah, wow. Like I'm just blown away by everything you just said. And I just kind of wanna highlight bits and pieces of what you just said. So first of all, you got as a company, you got into climate action, climate change and action by simply starting to measure the impact that you had. This is what I was hearing. You were looking at the flights, you were looking at the hotels, and you were working with a particular partner here, right?
So this was very simple what we're doing, or we're doing this ourselves actually. And then last year we added like scope 2 emissions, electricity and heating. So it's something that yeah, a few people have like done some light research on how to approach it. But what we're currently working on together with or like a company is to be B Corporation certified, So we're working together with them in order to have everything in place. We were hoping for that to happen last year, but there's just like a lot more governance and data collection, and then across 8 offices than we had expected. So we're working together with them in order to have even more governance around our impact, both environmentally but also socially, and these other aspects.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you started to measure. You're now looking to get B Corp certified. You started to put policies up internally about if the trip is in train is less than 6 hours, you got to take a train, and also having bikes available in the office for people for the team, I suppose, maybe even for visitors, for clients, if you're going to go out for lunch or whatnot. I could imagine have bikes available so that you can avoid uh, in combustion engine vehicles and burning fossil fuels with that. And and that's kind of what you did internally, and then you were looking at, wait, what is the impact that you had that you're having right now? Well, that's not ambitious enough. What's the total lifetime impact you had? Well, that's not ambitious enough. What else can we do? And you started to look at your supply chain, or you as a partner in the supply chain in working with other companies, and then you created policies. Like, you created policies for accepting new clients that they have to fulfill sustainability requirements. I mean, that is just that is amazing. I really like to hear that. That's so. What did that? I'm just curious. Like, what did that have of impact on the new business that you got in?
So like overall, we're in a like privileged position that also, since we're still an independent company, and like we do have ambitious growth targets, but we haven't been acquired by WPP or like one of the big fives, putting like highly aggressive growth targets, quote unquote, forcing us to expand into X amount of offices and X amount of markets. So that means that we can take things sort of more in our at our own pace. So I think that's a privilege. Um, and then we're fortunate enough that that some companies do want to work with us. We have had like a bit of a rocky period in Copenhagen specifically, from 2018 to 2020, where at like last year, we were doing better financially. Like, it was still okay, but it was subpar comparing to the Precis group. So I think like being in a somewhat privileged positions, being able to largely decide our own growth makes it easier for us to choose as well. Like, beggars can be choosers. Like, how hard would we go for this if we were about to lay 50% off? Like, I'm not entirely sure. And this is also where like the hypocrisy can potentially come in. But there are some engagements that we don't want to, or some potential collaborations that we don't investigate further because they don't sort of quote unquote pass the test for what we
Right.
want to do. And we're largely looking ahead. So with the companies that are approaching us going forward, even though our portfolio is very largely living up to those standards as well. So it has been like it's implemented and it's making a difference. One of the learnings is that like sort of arbitrarily putting someone like top down over a business, like that sort of framework, like it does work, but it hasn't been like a lot of that is not that visible, like also to our people internally. So it hasn't uh, maybe been the game changer I thought it might have been like 3 years ago. Like, we're still doing all the things, and I think it's a big step in the right direction. But one of our newer initiatives is around, and again, to sort of challenge like the big five and all of this, is to focus on something that we've coined like marketing ethics. So doing marketing in an ethical way. So think about like the creatives that you're using. We actually work with data minimization framework. So try to limit the amount of data that you're collecting to get more trust from your potential users, ideally, and then just use data that you have. Like there's been this old like adage or like coin is like, yeah, data is a new oil, but I more believe in, I can never remember his name. It's embarrassing. Let me just hear. It's uh, Benedict Evans, sorry, yeah, where it's more like no, data is the new sand, or data is sand, basically. So all these heaps and heaps of data that everyone's been collecting, that they're not using anyways. Why not like limit that, try to build a bit more trust, and then actively use the data that you're having. So what we're seeing now, and this was actually like a grassroots movement from within Precis coming off the heels of like the Netflix documentary, like The Social Dilemma. I've somewhat I have the book here as well. Like it's the Age of Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff that some of us have read as well. Like someone being critical about our industry and also in the way that things are being done. And then what's our take on that? So it sort of started as a grassroots movement and is now in this marketing ethics track that we're having. We've done a for us like a big survey together with Forrester in order to figure out from C-level and especially CMOs in Europe, like what are their thoughts on that specific topic? Is it important to them? And then soon we'll have like a data set for us to start working from and hopefully have a bit of a voice. So I think that the marketing ethic tracks is much closer to our core strategy and DNA, that it's a better fit for us to work with and get our employees excited about and hopefully get the market excited about. Whereas like our decision tree for working with sustainable and quote unquote like clients that aren't in controversial industries, like this seems to be a better fit for us because it's closer to our core business. Oh, yeah, and something also we realized is that we're definitely not experts in sustainability, which is also makes it a bit tricky and can make you hesitant to talk about it. But we're much closer to being experts on the whole marketing side and data collection and how to use creatives and what kind of communication you should have.
Yeah, yeah. And like I'm just kind of hearing you're adapting, like you're really taking a beginner's mind towards this big kind of beastie animal in front of you that's climate change and climate action, and you're just trying things out and not kind of scared to
Absolutely.
your feet. Yeah.
We are a big or I am a bit scared always. So because there is like the whole hypocrisy, and I'm that's also why I'm trying to be transparent around like not knowing a lot of things necessarily, also while talking here. But then again, like I don't think it should be an excuse for inaction, then rather look a bit stupid, potentially in the comment section here. I don't know. So, but yeah, I think that's a better approach than just be like humble about it and yeah, try to at least do something. Yeah, we were looking into some numbers last year, or there was like an article in a survey from the Danish authorities where like a lot of the focus around these conversations tend to be around like the big corporations, probably for a good reason as well. But when it comes to small and medium-sized businesses in Denmark specifically, it's only like 1 out of 3 that's actively doing quote unquote like something, because it is a tricky and touchy subject, and we don't experience like a lot of dialogue again, which is why I'm happy for the invitation here. So yeah, it is tricky. We don't know exactly what we're doing, but yeah, we're trying to do different things, and yeah, it's definitely changing all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hearing you're taking a lot of leadership in the industry, both with like setting requirements for the clients you're taking in, and also like the marketing ethics that you're now saying you're developing that as a practice as well. And I think that's really important. And I was invited actually down to. I'm going to share a personal story here. I was invited by a friend of mine here down to do beach cleaning, and I had never done beach cleaning before in my life. And I was like thinking, beach cleaning, I don't have time for beach cleaning. Who beach cleans? Like that's only people with lots of time. And I ended up saying, Alberto, you know what? I'm gonna join you beach cleaning, and actually, I think it's probably a cool way for us to just go and chat, and the kids to spend some time playing in the sand. So let's go. So we went down, and I was having this disposable plastic bag, and I was bending down to pick up like actually a lot of these ear butt cleaners and lots of other plastics as well. And I found myself like experiencing, wow, I'm really contributing to making this place better for other people. And I was just left with like a really great experience. Like really an experience of true genuine contribution. And after, I've been sharing about it like this. And I said, Abaso, this is amazing. Thank you for the invitation. And he said, Martin, you know what? We're walking here and we're picking up plastic on the beach, but all this plastic that we have here in this plastic bag, that's not even that big of a difference. If you look at all these 10, 20 people that's walking up here and they're looking down and they're seeing us walking on the beach, spending our time with our children, picking up plastic for other people, that is what is making the difference, because our action inspires other action with other people as well. And what I just wanted to say with that is, you're taking action, and other companies and other businesses, or even me now, as another person in business in a company, I'm really getting inspired by what you're doing. So I really want to acknowledge you for that, and thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing something, and it sounds like it's really something you're putting a lot of thought and effort into.
But thank you very much for the kind words, and I do think it is a good example what you're mentioning around, like it may be like the very individual impact may be limited, but it is like affecting like that, then that like that beach supply chain, quote unquote, with the other the other visitors. So I think it's an interesting area to look into, and it's probably easier for us again, like as an agency, whereas it's more complicated for manufacturing companies and all these different things. But it has, I think it's helped our framing, at least when it comes to these things. And then something that was on my mind as well when sort of figuring out or starting to work with the supply chain of clients is that there is this which is very much a part of B Corporation, and I do align with it, but it gives me like a it rubs me the wrong way to some extent. This whole notion about that it's that it's okay to do well, like while you're doing good, and that stems from reading Trailblazer, Mark Benioff, from Salesforce, where I think maybe it's a Danish mentality as well, where okay, yeah, like that all sounds good on paper, but you paid zero tax, like the company, in 2019. So there's another book called like Winners Take All by Anand Giridharadas. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, sorry. Where it's like this whole focus on it's okay to do well while doing good, and then sort of you decide how to do good. It goes a bit back to like the whole Carnegie Rockefeller philosophy that it's fine to make all the money in the world as long as you also donate to charities, but then you're the one who decides to donate to charity. But what he focused on in Winners Take All is that companies shouldn't necessarily only focus on doing well, but also doing less harm. So that was something that sort of played into like that whole decision tree, is that it's fine to do good, but it's also valuable to figure out how to do less harm, which I guess is also directly with like reducing your carbon footprint is a good example of that as well. I'm making all this sound like maybe a bit too fancy. Like we're definitely still figuring things out, but that's like where that's like where the ideas come from and stuff that's been on my mind. And again, then just trying to figure out to do something, try to implement some sort of rules and standard we found is a good first step. And then especially when it's very aligned with your core business, that makes it easier also to dedicate resources to. I think that's also one of the reasons why we're not B Corp certified yet. It's because it takes a lot of time. And it's easier also for someone in like me in my previous role to dedicate resources to when it's very closely related to the business.
Yeah. Well, so you're mentioning kind of like bits and pieces of things that you've been doing. I'd love to hear from you, just like from your experience. You've been going through the journey all the way from starting to track your data to now like taking a range of different types of actions as a company. What would you recommend a company who is committed to being a part of the solution for fighting climate change and who's still kind of fumbling a bit around, what would your recommendation be?
Like we're still in that spot as well, I would say. So I feel ya. First and foremost, I think that it's for us, it's been helpful to sort of like acknowledge and trying to articulate internally as well to our also like ambitious and very like also socially aware workforce that this is difficult, and management is probably gonna look stupid, and that's fine. Like so that's sort of that's on us, and it is what it is. But we're gonna try to do something, and then trying to find some sort of a more or less objective standard. Again, like when trying to look at the like at our supply chain and our portfolio, there was also like how on earth should we get started with this? So I made a slide. We had a partner meeting. So we were like 14 different partners. We were in Copenhagen, and sort of me and a colleague presented our ideas around our sustainability strategy. I think this was 2019 or 2020. No, 2019. Yeah. And I had like one slide where there was a scale, and then at one end of the scale there was like clients saving humanity, and the other one there was clients condemning humanity. And the only outcome from that was a highly personal, slightly politicized argument around who is better or worse than someone else. So that didn't go down very well at all. No one agreed. So you need to sort of try to figure out some sort of objective standard that you then like agree upon, and in order to get there, like I talked with B Corp to try to get them to point me in the right direction. They have like a local branch here in Copenhagen, and talked to a great guy, Stefan, who pointed me to some resources around. There's an Australian agency, British agency, Futera, who are very ambitious in regards to who they're working with, and they've made like a climate disclosure report, or they make that every year. So that was a great inspiration. And then I found like someone locally, like via that, who's also focused on it on that area, and then we started having some conversation. So I think like reaching out, trying to learn a bit around those things, really helped us, and that sort of pointed us like the sources that the most ambitious companies I've seen within our industry had located was like, for instance, when it comes to defining high carbon industries, it's defined by the International Energy Agency and the United States Environmental Protection Agency. So at least like now there's like a source. Other people have used that, or companies have used that source. Let's use that as a starting point. And then someone said, "Hey, but fast fashion isn't even on that list." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I don't care. Now we're gonna try to stick to this like official list, and then we can build upon it as we sort of go along." And then there's something defined as controversial industries, which includes like alcohol, arms, politics, pornography, and other things. That's defined by the International Finance Corporation in their ethical investment criteria. Is it the best source? I don't know. It's the best source I've been able to find. And then we're going to use that as well as a sort of a framework. So I think like agreeing on like some common standards, so that it doesn't become personal, which almost always end up in something slightly political. That has helped us get going. And also, yeah, like when it comes to carbon offsetting specifically, like try to start measuring stuff. We started very simple. So okay, how how many flights have we taken? How long were they? How many cabs are we driving? Like what are the distances? And sorry, let me just get what's the third one of oh yeah, and hotels. How many stays do we have at hotels? And then there's like a framework for how to calculate that. So just like by start measuring and implementing simple guidelines, that helped us start to get going, and then you can always build on top of it. So agree on a framework that hopefully you can measure. Start simple and ask around, like talk with someone within your industry, try to figure out who's doing a good job, and then learn from them. That was a very not a very good like these are the three things. It became very long, but that's at least like what some of the like when looking in hindsight, that has worked well for us.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Christopher. And so, like, that's kind of looking backwards and what you've done and sharing a bit of your learnings and recommendations for companies stepping into taking leadership on climate action here without knowing exactly how to do it. And I think that's something we all kind of share. And I know there's a lot of debate about like flights. Is flights good or not? There's a lot of debate about even like is carbon credit good or not? Do we need a carbon tax instead? And and I mean, we can look at some of the agreements that's been made at some of the COP meetings, and it seems like we just need all of it, actually. And I think that that's a good mindset to adopt about it, around it. And also, I think one thing that I always use to kind of navigate myself as I'm thinking about this is also like, what kind of world do I want to live in? There is some arguments, for example, that nature-based solutions, it's not very good. We don't know how to measure them. Like, we plant a forest, how much carbon does that sequester? How much carbon does that suck out of the air and store in the stem and the leaves of of the tree? I don't know. We don't know how to measure it. What if it burns down? Then it's not, it's not sequestered for many years, and then it's better to build a machine and we can suck out carbon from the air. All these kind of arguments. I'm just kind of like, I'm not sure I want to live in a world actually where we just chop down forests, put like lots of machines there to suck carbon out of the air, and put like black carbon blocks on the side. And like I actually kind of want to have nature around me. I think that's something that's a good measure. And I think also probably all of us somehow as life on this planet, we're wired to want to like this kind of like green looking, nice looking forest, or the blue ocean, or whatever it is. But so that was me blabbering a bit here, but I really want to hear from you. What do you think about carbon offsets, carbon removals? Is that something that you have considered doing at Precis?
So the only things that we're doing, to my knowledge, which is definitely not complete, is that we're like completely offsetting. I believe we're still using like the United Nations carbon offset platform in order to choose a project to invest in. And I completely agree. It's the same when I'm sitting over a beverage. It's a beer. Sorry, yeah. When I'm having a beer with my friends, and we start discussing some of these things, usually like a couple of beers in, so that the conversation can get really heated. It's like it's still yeah. I don't know like what's better either. But again, I don't. I think it's such a bad excuse for inaction. Then I think you should like try to do like a bit of research, because all of our time is very limited as well. Select something that there seems to be consensus around. And then like focus on that. And then if it turns out to be rubbish, or there's something that's even better, okay, then we'll do that instead. It's also like, is electrical cars even greener? It's like, yeah, come on, like it's we shouldn't necessarily that shouldn't keep us from not doing anything. I think so. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that conversation, and I also want to live in a world with nature 100%. But yeah, sorry, to get back to the question. Yeah. So we are offsetting our entire carbon footprint as measured by this scope, including scope 2. So also with like electricity from our offices, heating, train and IT purchases are like included in that calculation on top of the other things. And then again, like B Corp, like it's really helping us to get much better governance around a ton of stuff that it takes to get certified, and also be hopefully best in class. So that's our approach so far.
Yeah, really great. And how did that kind of go? So like you realized as a company, okay, maybe this is a good question actually, just for the listeners, and also like I actually want to know: did you sit down and did you make a commitment that you wanted to be carbon net zero or carbon negative by a certain percentage? Did you actually create that target in a number and put it on a dashboard?
Yeah. We wanted to be 100% carbon neutral, and that was in 2018. And then we also wanted to decrease our carbon footprint. We didn't set a specific metric for that, but we really wanted to decrease it. So we did like from 2018 to 2019, just with like these very simple guidelines, as I mentioned before. We did decrease our footprint by 80%, which by itself is a very big number, but it was taking like a very small amount of carbon footprint and making that like significantly smaller. So again, that sort of ties into how can we have an even bigger impact. I still think that on itself it's very positive. And then that got like reduced like very significantly. But I think that's COVID, like COVID playing a very big role in that. Like the biggest differentiator from us was like really like not flying everyone to like like a more remote location where we've been previously, like in Iceland and in Portugal and in France and these other places. But we're keeping it in the Nordics now. That's like the biggest differentiator, but also being aware of these other things.
Yeah. It's something. Yeah, it's a really so interesting. When you say carbon neutral, do you mean reducing the carbon footprint that you have as a company, or are you also doing carbon removal? Because one of this is how I think of it, at least as a company, everything you're doing, you can reduce that, but there will always be a percentage that you can't reduce. Like we have to somehow emit carbon
Yeah.
or other equivalents into the atmosphere for the productivity that we're doing, and that's fine also. And like, are you doing anything to remove those residual carbon equivalents?
Yeah, so we're like the all the emissions that we do have, like we're offsetting them. So that is like investing in a project that sort of, as my limited understanding, that neutralizes the emissions that we're having as a company.
Got it. All right, that's very clear. And how do you I don't know if is this something you're personally involved in, or is this a part of other parts of the team that's working with this?
So at this stage, it's I would say it's like largely an administrative task. So it's our like office coordinators who are tasked with collecting the data for like flights, which oftentimes they would be booking themselves as well, like flights, taxis, also as like those receipts come into accounting and that kind of stuff. So a lot of it is measuring, and then I actually believe that it's our group CEO still who decides. I'm not completely sure. But I do believe that he is involved in at least like which projects do we want to continue supporting and these things. But a lot of it is collecting the data,
Yeah.
and then annually we offset the emissions. Via that platform.
Right. So it's actually, so you're investing in reforestation projects or other types of offset projects.
Yes,
Mm,
exactly right.
yeah. That's just really great to hear. I think that's really like going already very, very far. So I really want to acknowledge you and the rest of the team for doing that. And I'm hearing it's also something that's important for the entire organization, given that it's actually the group CEO. I know you said you weren't 100%, but just that you are thinking that actually it may be that person, that already means that means a lot. It's funny. I was just sitting down, and I was sitting down. I mean, I was sitting here in my chair, right? And as you were speaking, you inspired like a thought, which was like, it's funny to look at different industries and how we're creating wealth in different industries, or value or whatever. And a lot of the value generating industries probably is very digital. And in the digital industries, most of what we use is electricity, I suppose. We're not as heavy polluters, for example, the production of cement. So, um, so cement and concrete and those kind of industries, they will just have to emit a lot more if we want to continue using cement and concrete in the buildings that we sit in. Um, and and I was just thinking, and I'm hearing that you're aware of the fact that you're mostly moving bits around and moving information around as a company, and that and that you also know that you're creating a lot of value with that. And of course, so you can look at your income statements and whatnot and see that, and that you're stepping up the responsibility and accountability that you're having. Also, probably you could cover for other companies and other industries who just probably impossibly could reduce it, or they probably could, or maybe we actually need to price something like concrete at higher prices because it's just too cheap with the amount of impact that it's actually doing on the environment, for example. So there may be a whole sort of accounting conversation to be had about that. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but
No,
that
no, no, but
I wanted,
but it's It's interesting, and it keeps coming back to like the supply chain for me as well, because, and this is where the hypocrisy comes in a full effect as well, because like the majority of our clients, I know Copenhagen the best, where it's probably, yeah, like 70% would be a rough number, sort of pulling that out of thin air, but I am still overlooking the invoices being sent, like a business to consumer, and most of those are selling products. So we're fueling packages being sent, at least like, yeah, all over the world roughly, which of course has a high carbon impact as well. So yeah, again, like it is complex, and it goes a lot wider. And then what about like the data centers and all these different things? So yeah, like I think you're bringing up like a good points with yeah, like when it comes to like our buildings. But yeah, everything is just so very complex, and there's a lot tied to it. But it still comes back to you. But that still doesn't mean that you shouldn't do anything about it. But it is highly complex, and it is inherently hypocritical, I think, with what we're doing. But yeah, we're trying to learn and improve.
Yeah, that's, I think that's kind of like a good way to kind of like start packaging a little key takeaway here. This is what I'm getting is it's like really like just get on the journey, get started, dip your feet, learn as much as you can, but also acknowledge you're not going to learn the whole thing. Just kind of get started, and we're gonna, with anything, we're gonna iterate, and we're gonna adjust course as it is that we're on this journey together. Um, and I just have a last question for you here, which is like from everything that you're doing and everything that you are not doing, what do you see is missing for you as a company to do even more than what you're already doing today?
Yeah, I think like the quick sort of cop out answer is resources, and it's difficult for us, or we found it difficult to spend a lot of resources, which is like would be time and money, on stuff that's like not core to the business. Like it's always like a priority. Okay, but should our office administrators, like, should they really spend like the next week on really getting like everything sorted as fast as possible for B Corp, for yeah, B Corporation? Not the best example necessarily, but it can be difficult for us to justify those things. So yeah, there's a resource aspect, and that also like ties back to like the core business, where I'm very excited about like the marketing ethics angle. So I think that tying things to our like core strategy as good, like as well as possible, I think like that can really help us. And when we are doing it like well ourselves, then we would like to be more vocal around things. Like I don't want to for us to do like a massive PR push before we've learned at least like a healthy threshold of what's going on and what we're doing, but then hopefully be able to make a bit of noise, because we are in a, like, I think our industry of digital marketing, it has a bad rep for a reason, and we would like to be a challenger within that. Even like, yeah, being 150 people, like it's a lot in the Nordics, it's not that much in the UK, and it's not a lot at all like in the US, and especially when it comes to these like the big ass media companies with literally hundreds of thousands of people. But hopefully try to make a bit of noise on how to do it a bit better. Like there's like the whole transparency issue, but also when it comes to the type of marketing that you're doing, try to make it less of a horrible experience. Like this classic terrible example that I keep here in my industry, at least, like with that then you're just like haunted with a pair of sneakers that you already bought until the end of days. And like yeah, there's a lot to do in making marketing like a less terrible experience, at least, and then being conscious around the data. So yeah, so we need to do more things right, and then we would like to be a bit vocal around that, so that hopefully parts of the industry takes notice, and we can be a part of nudging things in a better direction. I would be very very happy about that if we manage to succeed in that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I'm excited for this conversation here to be shared also with the rest of the industry and the rest of the business leaders out there considering how are we going to get started with climate action. And I want to thank you for taking the time here. I know you're busy, and I want to, you kind of actually made the decision to invest in this with your time here. So I want to thank you for that. And also, hopefully, this is the beginning of kind of creating the space for actually having a conversation about climate change and climate action as companies, creating the space for messing it up and then like correcting course as well. And I think that's just really important. Is there so like who else would you want to hear talking about their climate action here on this podcast?
Oof, great question. Um, I don't have a specific company or person in mind, but I would love to hear from and this is again with me focusing maybe a bit too much on like Silicon Valley, like cutting a bit through the BS a little bit and being transparent about mistakes, and then paying your bloody taxes, like not avoiding that whole thing, and then like investing some of it in philanthropical endeavors. So I guess like normal companies being open about things being hard and difficult within this area, and then sharing whatever they're doing. Like that was the motivation that you mentioned to me at the beginning also, Martin, and I think that's exactly what we're missing. We haven't been able to get good forums. I have another partner in the company who's taking over as CEO of Denmark. Anders Lykke, he actually was tasked with building a network, like a leadership network and a forum around discussing sustainability. And after searching for a year, like it didn't really manifest. Like everyone thought that it was awesome. People had different, also like political views and agendas, and no one, we didn't manage to foster a discussion. So I think that discussion is what we need at this stage, and that's what your podcast is aiming to do. So I think that's awesome.
Really great. Thanks a lot. So yeah, let's get some more. Let's get some more business leaders, small, medium-sized businesses here. I'm hearing also you mentioning tech as well. You'd love to hear from technology companies, cutting the BS and just like getting down to the facts of what's happening. So really, thank you a lot for that, and looking forward to speak again and connect again with you in the future.
No, thank you very much, Martin, and no, I very much appreciate the opportunity, and like my wife and friends don't want to hear about Precis anymore. Now I've been here for 9 years almost. So I love the opportunity to talk about our company. So thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.